Okay, next slide, please, Renee. Welcome to the webinar. This is the first in a series of rural family economic success webinars that the Community Strategies Group will be presenting in 2010. The webinars are open to alumni of RuFES Peer Learning Institute, site visits, conference sessions, and your colleagues and friends, and anyone else who you might want to invite to participate. As of yesterday, more than 70 people had registered for this webinar. Each webinar, including this one, is recorded and archived, so you can tell all your friends to watch and listen again at your leisure. Before we actually get into the body of the webinar, I'd like to give you some notes. If you have clarifying questions along the way, you'll note that there is a questions box on your webinar control panel. During the presentation, if Angela, Thomas, Jim, or Renee say something that you just don't get, please type in your question and send it. And I'll see the question and try to find the right time to pose the question to the presenters. If you have larger questions, we'll have Q&A periods early on after we share some of the IDA basics. Issue that might prevent you from asking a verbal question. If you have technical problems, please use the question box, and again, we'll try to let you know what you can do about them, or you can email me at jmol@aspeninst.org, and I am standing by to take your comments and to try to help you through your technical problems. Like all of the Rural Family Economic Success, or RuFES work done by the Aspen Institute and supported by the Annie Casey Foundation, the webinar today is built around the RuFES framework. The RuFES framework is a framework that consists of 27 family-focused goals that are necessary for hard-working, low-income families to get by and get ahead. And so we're organized around the themes of earn it, keep it, and grow it. Earn it being families earning a living that allows them to survive and thrive and raise their kids in the community. Keep it about them having access to and making good choices that safeguard their income and lower their cost of living and begin to forge stable and predictable family lives. And grow it is really all about families accumulating and maintaining assets that gain value over time and advance their family prosperity and community prosperity. Today's framework focus is on two of these major areas, on keep it and on grow it. And just to put things in context, we'll focus on which of the specific keep it and grow it goals are covered. Next slide, please. And within the keep it area of the framework, which focuses on families making good choices and having economic choices and safeguarding their income, this particular webinar is focused on families setting short and long-term financial goals and attaining them as part of establishing financial health. In the area of grow it, which focuses on accumulating assets, this is really focused on establishing a financial cushion by regularly building savings over time, on families finding and financing at competitive rates and purchasing quality homes in their communities, and on maintaining and retaining the value of any owned or inherited land and property. Renee Bryce-Laporte will take over from here.
Okay, sounds like I'm up. I will be doing the first part of the presentation here. I am a senior associate here at the Aspen Institute's Community Strategies Group and have worked for IDAs in the IDA field for, gosh, about 13 years. Also joining us is my friend and colleague, Angela Duran, who until very recently was the president of the Southern Good Faith Fund in Little Rock, Arkansas, which has done a lot of good work for many years on IDAs and works in a rural environment. My other colleague and friend joining us is Thomas Jensen, who is a program director at CASA of Oregon in Newberg, Oregon. And, well, Thomas, you may note that face there looks familiar. It's actually another Dane, Viggo Mortensen. Thomas was born in Denmark, but he and Viggo, they look just alike, so, you know, you can project there. We're also joined by Jim Gatz, who is the manager for Assets for Independence program that is the leading funding source for IDAs in the United States. He works with the Administration of Children and Families and the Office of Community Services, all housed in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in D.C. Okay, so we're going to talk here today. It's the right time, February 26th. It's just after 1 o'clock. We're going to talk about IDAs from a rural perspective. Now, our webinar objectives here, we're going to do, I will do a brief introduction to IDAs, and then we'll talk about IDA program operation. After that, we will have our first Q&A period. We will look for questions from the audience, and I know some folks who registered for this already do operate IDA programs, and so if they want to chime in with some solutions that they've come to, please feel free to chime in there. We'll have about 15 minutes for that initial Q&A session. Then we will move forward talking a little bit about some specific rural programs, the opportunities and challenges that are presented. Angela and Thomas will talk to you about their programs, and then we'll have Jim Gatz again talking about the Assets for Independence program. At the very end, we will connect you to a few additional resources where you can get more information about IDAs. Okay, IDA 101, a brief intro to IDAs. All right, so what is an IDA after all? Individual Development Account, or IDA, are match savings accounts, and they're designed to help low-income Americans save a few dollars to acquire an appreciating asset, really to help them not just be stable, but to move forward. The account holders save money on a monthly basis, or I should say really a regular basis, and then they have their savings matched by a public or a private agency. So where did the idea even come from? Well, the concept of IDAs were the brainchild of Dr. Michael Sherraden. He's a professor of social work at Washington University in St. Louis. He did a number of focus groups with low-income people who were persistently on welfare and wondering, you know, what's keeping you here? What's stopping you from moving forward? And he kept getting the answer back, well, every time I try to do something to better myself, the government takes away my benefits. So the idea came to him that if we offered an opportunity for people to save towards an appreciating asset, which would help move them up and out of the cycle of poverty and income supports, that we would ignore those savings for asset test purposes that all these public service programs have. So that's where the idea came from. Now, IDAs, they place a stepladder in the safety net. They're really a positive option to reliance on income maintenance to help low-income people get ahead. Again, it's not just helping maintain people at a solid spot, but it's also to move them up and out of poverty. And in addition to helping them gain assets, it also helps people change their mindset. As he says in the book that he wrote, Assets and the Poor, income feeds people's stomachs, but assets change their heads. As you're moving forward, you have a long-term focus, a more forward-thinking focus. Now, the growth of the field. After Dr. Sherraden's work came out, the field only emerged very slowly. At first, there were only 4 programs in operation, and then in 1997, my old organization, CFED, in cooperation with Dr. Sheridan's group, the Center for Social Development at Washington University, helped launch the American Dream demonstration, getting funding from a group of national funders to do this. It was the first test of IDAs as a strategy to fight poverty. At the same time this program was launched, the Assets for Independence program, well, Assets for Independence Act, was authored and offered in Congress. And that legislation passed the next year. It wasn't really an accident. It was offered by Senator Dan Coates of Indiana, who had one of those first 4 programs in his state. And so that was sort of the way that the bill was offered. And because he was head of the Labor HHS Committee, the bill was referred over to the Department of Health and Human Services, where it resides today. The evidence from AD and then the launch of the Assets for Independence program was responsible for really a humongous growth in the field, and now there are hundreds of programs in operation, and they're serving thousands of account holders across the country. Now, who's involved in the IDA program? There are 4 basic players involved. There are the account holders themselves, of course. There's a program administrator. Some people may say practitioner or a host program, but a program administrator. Now, these program administrators that operate the programs, they're usually a nonprofit organization. Sometimes they may be a credit union, but usually by definition or by rule of the match provider, the funder, they are a nonprofit organization. And speaking of which, the next player to be discussed is match providers. They are the funders. They are the people that bring the money to the table to help fund IDA programs. And then every program needs a financial institution to hold the funds that provide match for the account holders, and also to or the host program in cooperation with the funding source. Those account holders set an asset goal. They could be saving to purchase a home for the first time, to get a post-secondary education or training, business training, or to open their own business or to enhance a business that they have. In some cases, the account holder can save for another use, again, decided by the funder and the practitioner, like a car, but that's not true in every program. The account holder's duty is to save towards their goal, making regular deposits, and those savings are matched to take them towards purchasing that goal ultimately. The account holder also participates in asset-focused financial education. They get general education on handling finances, and they get education specifically towards the asset that they'll purchase. And I'll talk a little more about that in a minute or so. And then in the end, they're looking to do is purchase the asset with the savings and the match that have been accumulated on their behalf. So those are really the duties of the account holder. The program administrator and their roles. Again, they're usually a nonprofit organization. Their duty is to recruit an account holder and look either through the folks that are already coming through their doors or other people in their communities to find account holders to join their program. They secure the match. They are the ones that raise the funds in order to run the program and also to match the savings of the account holders. They provide or arrange financial education and support services for the account holders. So either they provide it themselves, or they find a partner in the community, or they find an online course. The program administrator finds some way in order to provide financial education to all of their account holders. They monitor the account holder progress to see how well account holders are doing in trying to reach their goal. They authorize the release of funds in the final analysis so that the account holder can have the funds go to the vendor that will provide them with that asset. And then finally, they document the results. It's really important as we move through and try to expand as a field that we know what kind of progress we're making. So, and very frequently, the funders of the programs require that the results be documented. And so it's very important that a program administrator keep track of how the program is going and how their account holders are doing as a whole. Match providers and their roles. Now, the match providers, again, meaning funders, there can be many groups. The Assets for Independence program, again, is the largest source of funding for IDAs in the United States. But funding can also come from state appropriations. Several states do fund IDA programs, and in fact, some counties fund IDA programs, some towns fund IDA programs. State and local government is a big source of funding. Indeed, you can have an agency like a housing agency that's interested in funding in addition to just a state appropriation. Another key funder of IDA programs are the financial institutions themselves. In addition to managing accounts, in addition to sometimes helping with financial education, financial institutions have been a very generous funder of IDA programs around the country. Another potential funder of IDAs are foundations. Now, most of the large national foundations they're unlikely to fund individual programs. A group of programs or a program with a particularly interesting pitch might have some success, but we really suggest that you look towards the local foundations that are looking to sustain the community. An IDA is a good source of providing uplift to your local community. The providers may often dictate the qualifications of the account holders they support, again, sort of helping figure out the rules like who are we seeking to serve with these IDA programs. And they often help or dictate the eligible uses for their funds. So can you save for a car? Do we want to save for microenterprise? Do we want to save for home repair? And they also often come up with the reporting requirements. It is important for programs that want to, for organizations that want to run a IDA program, that they pay attention to their sources of money. Most programs have more than one source of money, and you have to make sure that you're providing proper information or the information that's required to your source of money. Sometimes multiple funders will agree on a report that will work for all of them, and sometimes you just have to look at finding a reporting system rather that works independently or for each funder. Okay, financial institutions and their roles. I said I'd get back to them. Again, IDA programs the money is housed in federally regulated banks and credit unions. Either will do in virtually all programs. But you do want the money in a secure place so the account holder doesn't lose their savings and that the money that operates the program is in a safe place. These financial institutions will hold the accounts and they'll manage the deposits by the account holders. They will often go out and send the reporting to the account holders, telling them how much money is in their account and how much has been saved on their behalf. They often will help you with financial education. They have a lot of those capabilities on staff, and any management information system that you use to help run your program can also be operated out of the financial institution, and that's done in several cases. At the end of the day, when the account holder has reached their savings goal and been matched for all their savings, the financial institution does release the funds for asset purchase when authorized by the program administrator. It's important to make sure that that process moves smoothly. If you are saving to purchase a home, for instance, it's important that the money moves when it's supposed to for closing. If you're saving for education, there's going to be certain timing that's required to disperse the funds to make sure you don't create conflicts with financial aid. So having that process work smoothly and be well thought out is going to be important. And again, the financial institution may provide financing to purchase the assets themselves. Those are important roles played by the financial institutions. So how does this whole match thing work anyway? So the match, again, an IDA consists of savings and a match. So many programs will match the savings of an account holder 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. And figuring out how you do that, unfortunately, there's not one set answer. It really does vary from place to place. As you can imagine, if you live in Ord, Nebraska, you may need a different amount of savings to purchase an asset than you will in Omaha, Nebraska, or if you're in Hamilton, New York, it may be different than if you live in New York, New York. The amount that is decided, the amount to be saved for as an asset goal in the end is determined by the funder, the practitioner, and again, your local costs and conditions. And so there's some art to it, and there's some science involved as well. And as I mentioned earlier, in some cases, savings and match funds are not always counted toward an individual's asset limits. They're often not counted toward an individual's asset limits. So if you are receiving SSI, your savings and match may not be counted towards your asset limit. So it's an exception. Okay, so how can the IDA savings be used? Now, originally, there were 3 basic uses that we aimed for as an asset goal for the account holders: post-secondary education, business capital, microenterprise funding, or for home ownership. Now, there are 3 alternate savings goals, and those are I'll just sort of go through these 3. One is home repair. Particularly important in a lot of rural areas, people do own their homes, but they may be in real need of repair. Repairing your home it's an appreciating asset. It does help your home increase in value. So there are some programs that will permit home repair as a use. Retirement. Again, retirement funds are an appreciating asset. There are some programs in some places that will allow you to save for retirement as an appreciating asset. And the biggie for rural environment is automobiles. Now, a car, as we know, once you drive it off the lot, it does depreciate in value. That's true. So in that sense, it's not an appreciating asset. May allow you to do that. Okay, permissible uses. Let's go back to the big 3. Home ownership. Not surprisingly, this is the most popular use of an IDA. About half of the account holders want to use their IDA for this purpose. Now, sometimes it doesn't work out because it's too hard to repair someone's credit in time, or even with combination of other savings incentives in the area or home ownership incentives in the area, a particular account holder may not be able to build enough funds to purchase a home, but it does still remain the largest, most popular use of an IDA. It is, after all, the American dream. Microenterprise. About a third of account holders want to use their IDA for business capital. You know, in a rural area, it can be particularly helpful to have a microenterprise as a permissible use. The figures I've seen say 20 to 25% of new jobs in rural America will be created through microenterprises, and many microenterprises turn into much larger businesses. So it has some particular relevance in rural communities. Education. Now, most of the rest of IDA account holders use their funds to pursue post-secondary education, and that can be seen broadly. When I say post-secondary education, that's not just going to Colorado State, but it may also be going to San Bernardino Community College. It can also be going to a trade school to learn how to be a barber or a mechanic or whatever. Some folks use their IDA funds to support their children's educations. Some programs do permit that, and that is something that has been done, and it's not at all unusual. So education is also an important use. Okay. So let's talk about program administration, and we'll just handle a few basics here. Okay, an IDA program structure, you've got two sides here. You've got savings and match, and you've got training and support. Account holders, again, save on a regular basis. Sometimes savings is lumpy. They save in the bank or the credit union. And I should say that you also want to keep in mind, when I say lumpy, I mean that people don't always save the same every month. Because IDA account holders are low-income people, they have rainy days too. So they may not have the maximum that they can save each month. Many programs, many successful programs, allow account holders to save more during times like now, being the tax season, because you can get a larger lump sum through the EITC, and rather than have account holders spend their money on big screen TV, they can put their money towards their future use with an IDA. On the other hand, besides savings and match, there's also training and support. So at the same time that account holders are savings and having their savings matched, they're receiving training and support so they know how to use their funds well, handle money in general, and also to aim to promote their permissible use more effectively, so that they have an idea about what they need to do to purchase a home and keep their savings up to maintain the home and operate their microenterprise and work effectively towards getting a post-secondary education. Okay, savings and match. Match rates, again, should be determined with research on prices in your local market for home purchase, tuition, price of business material, etc. It's going to be important that you pay some attention to getting this right. What you do not want to have happen in the end is to have an account holder jump through all the hoops that they're supposed to be able to jump through, save what they're supposed to be able to save, go through their classes, and then be unable to purchase an asset. Your credibility is going to be important, and really it's really vital here. Okay, IDA programs are going to also need to establish procedures that protect against fraud. It's not common that an account holder try to defraud the program, but it certainly has happened. You want to make sure that the funds are going to go to permissible use. That goes back to the program administrator making the final yaha on a account holder purchasing from a particular vendor, so that you want to make sure that the funds are going towards not a mink coat, but towards purchasing a home. We also want to, again, ensure smooth dispersal of funds from the account to the vendor. Timing can be very vital. And we want to ensure that the account holder gets the best deal possible. And I say that's debatable. Some programs really do want to make sure that account holders look for the best deal. On the other hand, at the same time that you're providing your account holder with financial education and asset-specific education, some programs feel like they shouldn't get involved in making those kind of decisions for someone, that people can go out and search for the best deal, the deal that works best for them, rather than taking on that more paternal role. Okay, training and support. Most programs feel that all account holders should receive financial management training. Some account holders will be more savvy than others. Now, that training can be delivered by a partner organization. Again, most IDA practitioners don't have all the skills to run the IDA program under one roof. They generally work with local partners one way or another, and I think you'll see Angela and Thomas talk about that. The practitioner really, in terms of asset-specific education, should offer training for each permissible use, so that if you are offering home ownership, that you have some training helping low-income people, your low-income account holders, figure out what they need to do to purchase their home, what they need to do to keep their home up, to offer that business training for your micro-entrepreneurs, and also to help guide folks through the school application process or the financial aid process, work-life balance for those folks who are going to school. And if you have other permissible uses, you should offer training for that as well. Most of the research shows that 10 to 12 hours of training works best, that once you get beyond that, the returns start to diminish, but that you shouldn't really offer less than that, so that your account holders are receiving just the right amount of support to help them, again, use their savings and match effectively. Okay, as I mentioned just a moment ago, the practitioner may need help in delivering training to the account holders. Very typically, these partners can be financial institutions. They offer a lot of these services, or can offer, they have the ability on staff to offer these services. Educational institutions sometimes offer training courses. In many states, for instance, junior colleges offer microenterprise training. And then there's specialized institutions. And I guess when I say specialized institutions, I do mean things like a microenterprise training organization. You know, and I miss saying this, that educational institutions sometimes themselves, they offer the classes on campus anyway for the people who are students. So you can get classes as a student, a full-time student, in the educational institution to help you get your asset-specific education. Okay. Staff support of account holders. The retention rate of an account holder can really be helped by staff taking an interest in their progress and helping them move forward and work through problems that they may have as they're saving and trying to move forward and getting past those rainy days that they may have. Different program administrators have different views on this. Some programs, I've worked with folks who said, I ain't providing no social service, and they really leave the account holders to their own devices to work through problems and find their way from point A to point B. There are other programs that do a lot of intervention with account holders, and you will find that with some of your account holders, these are folks who have never had this kind of success, and certainly not this kind of success building money and savings. And they will trust your staff, and they will go to your staff for advice on a lot of things, because this is the first person that believed that they could do anything, sometimes including themselves. So there are some account holders who may want more help or may require more help, and it's going to be up to you to figure out what's just right for you. You have to know that the more help that you provide to your account holders on an individual basis, the higher your costs are going to be. And indeed, the more services that you performance in the current economy. Is this the right time to save? You know, a lot of people will think that, well, you know, this is a tough economy. This is not. People don't have the cushion to save, and what good is it going to do them? And I guess I would note a couple things that, you know, IDA account holders, as best we can tell, have done fairly well in this economy. We have this great big foreclosure crisis, and IDA account holders have actually had foreclosure rates that are much lower than other similarly situated people in the economy. So other low-income people are foreclosing at great rates, and IDA account holders are not. And why is that? That's because they have already been educated on what's a good loan. They're not going for risky loans. They already have an idea in their head of what they can afford for the long term. Furthermore, this economy that has homes at a lower price provides opportunities for account holders to purchase homes at a rate that they might not be able to in the future. So home purchase is more accessible for them. Certainly if you're receiving educational training, having more degrees, and having more training and preparation is going to make you a more valuable, more attractive potential employee. And certainly if you are getting training on how to run your business better, you're going to do a better job of navigating the tough waters of running a small business. So I would argue that this is actually a very good time for people, low-income folks who are interested in moving ahead in the long term, to be involved with an IDA program. And because IDAs have been successful, they are a pretty good bet for funders. I have one friend who's running a statewide program in Utah who says she actually is having better success now than she's had before, because funders are looking at how can they still help in their community and do so in a way where they can feel more sure that their efforts will reap some long-term benefit. So IDAs are actually a solid bet for funders in the long term. Now, what I'd like to do, John, do we have anybody who has questions there?
Okay, we're opening things up for questions now. If you have a specific question, please press the little hand button on your screen, and I will unmute you and give you the opportunity to pose your question. Okay, I have a question. Actually, I have a written question here.
That's great.
And this one comes from Karen Smith, and she is asking if we have any recommendations for financial education in statewide programs where you have 1 to 2 participants in any one rural community. I understand that one of our later presenters may cover some of this, but any comments on that?
It is true that we will cover financial education a little more later. There are a great deal of financial education curricula that are out there. I definitely suggest that folks don't try to reinvent the wheel. And if you have any trouble finding resources, come to me, and I'm certainly happy to direct you towards them. If you only have a very small number of participants, it's also helpful because with only 1 or 2 participants you can speak to people on a more individualized basis, is that you try to provide some individualized help. And just because you use a curricula that is standardized doesn't mean that you can't craft it to meet your own local needs. So I would suggest that you look at the curricula that's available. Folks like FDIC offers curricula, but they're really American Express. There are many financial curricula that's out there, and some of it will depend on the audience that you're trying to serve. So if you have any specific questions, you can certainly email me at rene.bl@aspeninst.org. That's Renee@aspeninst.org, and I'd be happy to help you work through that.
And we'll provide that email address to folks in a follow-up email after the webinar. Next question is from Karen Peters. Let me unmute Karen and see if she's still available. Karen, are you there? Okay, I've lost the little phone icon on my control panel for Karen. She may have dropped off inadvertently. We'll go to a question from Carrie Gladstone.
Hello, Carrie.
Carrie, are you there?
Yes.
Carrie, I don't know if you're using a speakerphone. You're not coming through very clearly.
Let me try calling in.
Okay, Karen appears to be back on. Let me try Karen while we're waiting for Carrie. Karen? Karen Peters.
Oh, you know I'm here. How funny.
Yes.
I'm looking for some sort of idea that we can tie to financial education, completion of programs, that people create a reserve account, an emergency account, whatever. Anything out there in that format?
I'm not sure that I'm understanding your question correctly. What you're wanting folks to do is to have as their savings goal the reserve account for themselves. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Boy, I've not heard of that as a permissible use. I'm not sure what part of the country are you in, Karen?
Arizona,
You're
in Williams.
You're in Williams, Arizona. Okay. Well, one resource that we'll point folks to at the end is the IDA network. The IDA network has a list of programs that are operating and a listserv. And you can search for other programs that are in Arizona, and you can also use their listserv to ask folks questions. There's also a list of programs of grantees of the Assets for Independence program, and we'll be able to show you that resource later. But I have to say that a savings program to build yourself a buffer at the end of the year, or excuse me, just a buffer that is not something that I have seen. Now, there's no law that says you can't do that. If you can convince a funder to help fund that, then you can certainly do that. There won't be anything that stops a funder from providing that kind of match.
Oh, okay. Good.
Okay, Renee, I have Carrie Gladstone's question in writing, I believe.
Oh, thank you, Carrie.
It says, I also read that a success factor for IDA savers is participation in peer support groups. Can you comment on that and offer some insights into organizing such groups in rural areas with few savers?
Well, you know, there are a lot of groups that have peer support. That's often true, particularly with microenterprise. I think that has been a option that's been traditionally true with microenterprise. A lot of people sort of working off the Grameen model, and I would suggest that I guess in many cases more heads are better than one. At times that I've sat in on IDA classes, you often see that the class is helping instruct the student themselves. I'm not positive if well, at least not coming to mind, if I've seen academic research pointing towards peer learning being better in general than others in terms of success of account holders. But, you know, programs really vary, and I would suggest you sort of gear it towards what you're seeing with your particular client population. I've worked with programs. There was a program in Wisconsin that I worked with where they had an administrator who worked individually with
which I will just answer very quickly, is whether or not the PowerPoints will be available to people who've participated in the call. And yes, we will post the PowerPoint online and send everyone who's participated in the call a link after the conclusion of the webinar.
And in fact, it'll be also distributed to folks who are no-shows who registered, so yeah.
Yes. Another question, this one from Kiana Flores. What kinds of outreach strategies for IDAs are working best in rural areas? And Renee, if any of these questions are going to be tackled in the later part of the program, you can just go ahead and tell folks that. And we'll defer.
Thomas will talk some about recruitment, and perhaps at the end there may be a little more to add in addition to what he has to say, and we can tackle that in the Q&A session. But yeah, there are variety of methods that folks can use to reach out to folks. My very brief answer will be that you again should look at services that you're already providing. One real big draw for a lot of account holders or a lot of programs has been using EITC. A lot of people come through the door through EITC, and you fill out the returns and say, hey, while you're at it, would you like to join this IDA program? They have this money that's about to come to them, and they have this program which can increase their dividends there, and so that's one big draw. But there's so many different types of programs, and people recruit from Head Start. I would say look at the community that you're already serving.
Thank you so much, Renee. And that concludes the first question and answer period. If we didn't get to your question, we will try to get to it later, or you can pose it in our second question and answer period. I'll turn things back to Renee to continue the webinar.
Thanks a lot. Okay, so in a moment we're going to turn over to Angela Duran from Southern Good Faith Fund and Thomas Jensen from CASA of Oregon to talk a little bit about their own experiences and as rural practitioners, and share some of their challenges and some of the advice that they have. I will just set this up quickly by just pointing out that rural practitioners really do represent a significant minority in the field. There are a minority of programs that are rural, but they are significant. There are a large number of IDA programs that are out there that can help provide guidance and also show that this can be done in a rural environment. You know, it's an important constituency given the share of people that live in rural America. Almost a quarter of Americans still live in rural environments, and poverty in rural America is growing more quickly than it is in the rest of the country. And so IDAs are a real option for us here. Nevertheless, the rules are not always crafted with rural practitioners and rural account holders in mind. And so we want to be able to provide a little guidance to you as potential practitioners as you seek to run and start up programs. Some typical challenges occur because of the distance that there is between homes and training centers and so forth there, transportation back and forth, how do you get to classes, you know, the whole car issue. There's often less access to funding for match funding and to run your organizations. Finding a financial institution partner. Very often financial institutions in rural communities tend to be more community focused, but that's not always true, and the number of options that you have aren't always large. Do the permissible uses fit your community? Does the funding program point to uses that work for your community? How do we recruit account holders? Are there going to be different methods that we need to use to recruit account holders? How do we recruit enough account holders to really make it worthwhile for us? And staffing. Are there going to be enough qualified people that are interested in serving the community? And then how do they reach our client population? So there are a number of key factors here. Rather than go on, I'm going to turn things over to my friend and colleague, Angela Duran, who's been at this for a little while, and she could talk a little bit about what's going on, or what has gone on at the Southern Good Faith Fund as they've set up work in rural programs. Angela, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, well, hello everybody, and hope everybody's doing well today. One thing I want to make real clear before I start talking is that I am not speaking for Southern Good Faith Fund. I'm no longer with the organization. Had a great time there. We did some good work, but I'm really speaking from, you know, kind of my experience when I was there and what I learned, not for the organization. And, you know, some things may have changed since then. And I believe at least one or two of my old colleagues from Southern Good Faith Fund are on the line, so if I get anything wrong, they can correct me. So just real quickly, kind of speaking from the perspective of my experience when I was at Southern Good Faith Fund, we were not, or are, they are, a nonprofit organization based in Arkansas and Mississippi, working in rural areas. It's an affiliate of Southern Bancorp, mostly working in towns of about 15,000, although there were a couple of quote-unquote cities of 50,000. At any one time, we were working with about 300 account holders, and we really tried to combine what we were doing with IDAs with other programs and services that we had. Like we had a business development center, had a home buyer and credit counseling program, had a career pathways program to help people access community college. We also run a pretty large, I'm having a hard time saying I don't work there anymore, ran a pretty large rural VITA program, which I think they're in the throes of right now. And then being affiliated with this bank gave us an opportunity to promote other bank products to people. And then we were an original member of Arkansas Assets Coalition, which was our IDA coalition, and it's kind of broadened. Okay, next slide. So one thing that I want to say a little bit about was what it's like to work with financial institutions, both banks and credit unions, in a rural market. And what can happen is there can be a need to forge partnerships with multiple financial institutions. When I was at Southern Good Faith Fund, over time we were mostly in towns where Southern Bancorp had a presence, but most rural IDA programs aren't affiliated with their own bank. So that means that if you're in multiple communities, you have to go out and forge relationships with multiple banks, because often the large regional banks don't have a presence in your community. And what that can mean is a lot of time spent on both developing and maintaining those relationships. At one point, I think we had bank partnerships and credit union partnerships with over 15 financial institutions. And so there was a lot of time spent on the front end negotiating the agreements. But then, as staff would turn over in each of those 15 banks, there were kind of ongoing educational requirements for our staff. And working with different banks can make the tracking of the data difficult as well. If some financial institutions do monthly statements, some do quarterly statements. Even the ones that do it monthly, they may come out at different times of the month. And then we were really trying to get as electronic as we could. And so often smaller rural banks, that's a little more difficult for them to do in terms of, just giving you an electronic upload of the data. All right, next slide. So another topic that I wanted to just say a few things about in terms of rural is both staffing, coverage, and the distance. The area that we were working with at the Good Faith Fund was an area that was kind of 200 miles by 300 miles. And, in the areas we were in, there weren't a whole lot of interstates. It wasn't as the crow flies in terms of getting there. You'd have to, drive down one highway and up another, just, no direct routes where we were trying to go. And because the towns were pretty small, I mentioned earlier, kind of the typical size was about 15,000, we really couldn't afford to have a staff person in every community that we were working in. So we have other partners in those communities, and so the very nature that we had the partnership with the bank allowed there to be physical bank staff in all those communities that could, at least when someone walked in and wanted to know about IDA, someone to answer their basic questions. But we tried some other partnerships too. One town was about 2 hours away from our closest staff person, so we actually partnered with another nonprofit there that was doing a lot of home ownership and small business, and so that they could actually offer IDAs in our community. And then another partnership we had with our small business program, we had a staff person in that community at another nonprofit 1 day a week, but when we weren't there, they would make appointments for us and that kind of thing. in terms of training, there can be some real challenges, and that question came up a little bit earlier. We really wanted to be able to deliver as much training as we could as well. The disability
Uh-oh. Have we lost Angela? Can others hear her?
We seem to be having some audio problems with Angela. And it shows her audio link is having dropped out.
Okay,
Renee,
so
what I suggest we do is we move forward and then come back if Angela can reconnect.
Okay, so maybe
Oh,
what
wait a
I'll do-
minute.
She's
she's
back.
back.
Wonderful.
I'm sorry, my call dropped for no good reason.
Okay, try again.
Okay, so I'll just pick up where I was. I was talking about training. We had also developed our own curriculum, and it was really interactive, and so it almost kind of necessitated the need to have staff there. In fact, we had hands-on exercises where you would go to the local grocery store to learn budgeting and that kind of thing. So we did look at doing some video training as a way to cover multiple sites, but it never quite worked for us. And one thing we did do, though, was offer an online version for some people who either, the distance was just too much, or, sometimes we'd have somebody who was both working and in school, and the only 3 hours a day they had was 2 a.m., and we weren't teaching classes then. So anyway, those were some of the challenges with training. And transportation, even though we really tried to have physical presences in even some small communities, that could be hard for some people. They may be 30 or 40 miles out in the country from the community we were in, and while that distance may not be as much as, say, some of our friends in Montana, 30 or 40 miles is really no different than 300 or 400 miles if you don't have a car. But like I said, we tried to find some ways to work around that. Okay, next slide. Unless we say how tough everything about working in rural is tough, I found that one of the best things about working in rural was marketing, that it really can be pretty cheap. I think we found our local newspaper would pretty much print our press releases word for word, and I think sometimes they even put their own byline on there. And, ads in radio spots were cheap. People actually read the cable access bulletin boards, because that's the place where all the revivals and the reunions are posted too, so people read those things. And, when you're in a rural area, you're pretty much at 1 degree of separation. Everybody knows everybody. So once you've been around for just a year or so and have begun to have some successes, every house that's been bought or repaired, every business that's been started, every college degree, all of those pretty much sell themselves to other people in the community. And I think something that became something I kind of figured out once when I was working on a grant proposal, but it's pretty amazing what kind of market penetration you can have in a rural area. So, take a community of 15.
Okay, Angela's gotten bumped off again. Hopefully she will give it a few seconds, and hopefully she can get back in here. Just in case, Thomas, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, if we can't get Angela back in a minute or so, we'll may jump forward to you and we'll circle back to Angela.
Sounds fine.
Why don't we go ahead with Thomas?
Okay, well, why don't we do that? Sorry for the technical difficulty. Hello? Okay, we're going to go forward. Thomas,
Yeah.
Thomas Jensen is at CASA of Oregon. He's a program director there. When Angela comes back, we'll give her a turn to jump back in.
Sure.
And he works with the organization there, and I'll give him an opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the services that they provide there and some of the particular challenges and opportunities that have come up in their operation of an IDA program.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I will start out explaining a little bit about what CASA of Oregon is and what we do, and I'm assuming that Angela is probably coming on fairly soon, so hopefully it's not going to be too confusing for everyone.
I'm back. I am so sorry.
Okay,
y'all want me to continue, or are you talking?
Well, why don't we do that? I'm sorry, Thomas was about to introduce himself, but I'm going to go back to you and have you finish up your piece, and then we'll go back to Thomas. Excuse the technical difficulties.
Yes, I'm sorry, everyone.
That's quite all right.
Okay, so I'll just quickly go through. I had this terrific market penetration example, but the bottom line of it is I think I was saying that if you've got 100 IDAs open at any one time in the example community, you'd have 2% of your households. And over a 10-year period, if you were opening 100 new accounts each year, you'd have a 20% market penetration by the end of 10 years. And so I just think that's pretty amazing in terms of the visible impact in the community you could start to see over time. And
Wonderful. Okay.
So then real quickly, I'll just say we did a lot of public policy work, forming a statewide coalition when we first got started. And we were working with people both urban and rural to do what we were trying to do. And what we were able to do, we started with about 3 programs in the late 90s, and I think they're up to about 10 programs now. And we were doing those things to increase funding. We started with about $500,000 worth of TANF funding in the first year. Most recently, we were up to over $2 million a year from TANF funding and CDBG funding. And then, as I mentioned, the number of programs has really grown. And then another role that we were really able to do for each other is provide technical assistance. So I think in the early years, the 3 programs that all started at the same time, we helped each other. But as more programs came on, we would reach out and help our peers. So I am done, and once again, apologize for the technical difficulties.
No worries. Thank you very much, Angela. That's good information, and maybe some folks will have more questions for you at the end. I had started to introduce Thomas Jensen, who's our second guest, and he joins us again from CASA of Oregon. And so, Thomas, I'm going to ask you to pick up and proceed explaining a little bit about CASA and some of your experiences there.
Sure. Thank you. Hello again. CASA of Oregon was founded in 1988 as a rural housing organization. Primarily focused on housing migrant farm workers and their families. We are a community development corporation and a CDFI, a community development financial institution. And while we were founded in 1988 as a housing organization, we got very involved with asset building and particularly IDAs in the early 2000s. We, and I know Jim is going to talk a little bit later about the Assets for Independence program. We actually a grantee of the Assets for Independence program, and I think we have now been successful in obtaining grants from the federal department for about 9 times. So we've done this for quite a while. We act as an intermediary organization. We are both state-funded and federal-funded, and and the real work with the individual participant takes place in the community, 1 degree separated from us, if you will, with community partners. And it's really that place where our work takes place. What I will briefly sort of present during this time is what we've learned since 2000 in operating this, and really some of the main points is going to come around capacity issues with some of the members of our network, our partners, and some participant recruitment issues that we've experienced, and also how we then, over the last 10 years, have really tried to change how we approach both the capacity issue question and the participant recruitment question. And lastly, I will talk a little bit about utilizing existing networks in rural areas to deliver these IDAs. So can I have next slide? Oh, okay, got it there. So basically, in 2000, the Council of Oregon, we were approached by 9 community organizations, rural-based community organizations, all interested in this idea of asset building and providing direct capital infusion into their communities through IDAs. But they had some foresight and realized very quickly that to be operating a program of this kind at any effectiveness, they would need to be a certain scale. There would simply be too much administrative costs to run it. So reluctantly, I must say, we took on the role as a fiduciary, as the lead agency for a network of these organizations. And the very first year that we operated with a budget around $500,000. That included both match and operating funds. So you can see with 9 organizations plus the network administrator, a $500,000 budget is very small. That, of course, has grown over the years. One of the primary issues to some of our, particularly our rural partner organizations, that there is simply a lack of capacity in all kinds of understanding of that word in these organizations. Very often, there is a lot of staff turnover, and there's just challenges in finding the right kind of staff, because we have to remember that an IDA program, it is a financial tool, it is a financial product that people get into, and there is a lot of financial education attached to these accounts. So finding the right person is able to communicate this to potential participants and train participants can be challenging. And to be honest, a lot of our partner organizations, the reason that they've been very attractive to work with us as a network is that on their own, they wouldn't be able to really raise the kind of funding that was necessary to make the program work. What we've then experienced is that we have come to take on this role of you know, what do you do with the capacity issue in the organizations, and staff perhaps not having the right background, or perhaps needing some additional training to work with participants, is that we've taken on a very strong technical assistance role, and we do a fair amount of ongoing training, financial education, not for participants, but actually for partner staff, to make sure that they are all up to date with their curriculum and their trainer certifications and so forth, so that we make sure that we as an intermediary can help the organizations that may have, say, high staff turnover and that we need to retrain staff when they come on. That's one of those issues that has been very huge to us in the beginning. And lastly, on this topic, the capacity piece, also been just in operating a program. And I use the word bureaucracy in the slide, and I don't mean that necessarily as negative, but with any program, and particularly government-funded programs, there is quite a set of regulations and reporting functions that need to be in place to ensure accountability, and IDAs as well. So for a lot of our organizations, we know that when we work with them, that they would not have been able to take this on from an administrative point of view. So could you go to the next slide, please? So, and I think I may already have touched upon some of these questions. But really what has come out of this network model is that we started out rural. We really started with all these rural organizations. And in each of these organizations, small housing organizations, small microenterprise development organizations, perhaps will do 5 to 10 accounts each in a year, which on its own is not enough to really support a program, but as an add-on to existing programs is actually feasible. And then over time, this network has grown into some of the more urban areas of Oregon. And the cost per account, the cost per participant is much lower in the urban areas. There's a much larger group of customers, if you will, or potential participants, and a lot more resources available in general for education and for other kinds of support. So what this network model, sort of this rural/urban network model, really has done is that we've been able to, as administrators, to do sort of background cost sharing, if you will. And just with the realizations that, yes, of course, it is more costly to operate in a rural area because of some of the questions or some of the issues that Renee raised earlier with transportation and distance and so on. So that's one of the ways that we've kept growing this model to make sure that overall it becomes sustainable. And then on top of our technical assistance, what we really do now is we go out and we start identifying potential partners and essentially come out with a program in a box, if you will. Everything is designed, forms, procedures, and everybody's assigned a portfolio manager here at our organization to be their direct contact. So to the extent that the organization is committed to be part of asset building, they can almost start from day one enrolling participants because we have all this ready. Let's go to the next slide, please. So in terms of so that was the capacity piece, really talking about, well, people are in the rural areas and organizations really stretched thin already. How do you add a program that may be a little heavy in administration and that may need a certain scale to operate? And the network model is what we've come up with. Now, in terms of recruitment, what we learned very early on, and I guess we're still learning, is that people are attracted by various things. And for IDAs, you know, one way you can recruit is, of course, reach out and say, hey, here's a good deal for you. There's a 3-to-1 match. Don't you want some money? And certainly that is how some outreach have done in the past. Unfortunately, that's also the kind of outreach that has the highest dropout rate for us. It simply attracts people at the wrong time, or it attracts people that haven't made their minds up about the ultimate savings goal, for example, home ownership or small business development. So, and even more so in the rural areas. I mean, there was mentioned that very sparse populations, huge distance, how do you really get a critical mass of participants together? Well, what we do is, well, at least here in the last few years, have been do a very careful assessment of the individual counties that we operate in and essentially asset map the counties and say what organizations or structures are in place and who operates, who works with not just the asset goals but also the people, the income level and the net worth level and education level that the IDA program tries to target. Who works with these people already, and how do they work with people around asset building? And then we approach the organization to add on the IDA, basically. So outreach for us is primarily not to talk about IDAs. Outreach for us, and it is shown to where you find the appropriate and the ready people for the IDA program. So, so that's how we've done that. And then obviously we sell the end product, not the IDAs. Next slide, please. And that leads into, again, when we do this asset mapping of the rural area, we really look at the current infrastructure, what currently is in place. And here's a list of a couple of institution in our organizations and private companies that is usually present to some extent in rural areas. One huge successful collaboration that we've done in the last couple of years has been through educational institutions. We simply approached high schools as well as community colleges to go directly through their student counselors or through their financial aid officers to have enrollment take place at the school. Basically because they are already interacting with families or they are already interacting with people that are looking to go on to post-secondary education. And so we're using the education institutions, and we're trying to add, or what we have been able to is to add this process into a current process they have either in career counseling or in the financial aid process. So for the individual institution, it is not an extra piece. Well, it's an extra piece of work, but it's not necessarily a much added cost. We've done the same with some Head Start and some early Head Start organizations, particularly the ones that are doing family work and that are doing work around financial goal setting, because they actually do quite a bit of one-on-one work with families already, and they're already funded to maintain that staff capacity to do this. So by having the Head Start coordinators go out and have the IDA as their tool in their tool belt, if you will, we've been able to really reach rural families that you may not even be able to reach through educational institutions or other places. And finally, financial institutions / professional associations. We have been fairly successful working with financial institutions that cover the rural areas. And certainly in the professional associations, there's usually members of either the FPA, the Financial Planners Association, or CPA organizations or other kinds that are pretty eager to take an active role in assisting with training, for example. And we use the Financial Planners Association and their pro bono chapter to do the ongoing training with staff at our organizations. And that's a really important piece, if I didn't stress that earlier on. Can we get the next slide, please? Next slide. Thank you. So what we have experienced over time is that not only has this engagement with asset building in the rural areas been a learning process and an organizational development process for us, a lot of our program partners in the communities have, just by having this IDA added to their current programs, really expanded and have even sort of mission-based expanded their work around financial self-sufficiency and economic development. And to me, it's just a very neat sort of byproduct, if you will, of this IDA, and particularly in the rural areas. And I think, well, just anecdotally, what I hear back from our partners is that there is such a direct impact from these funds, from the IDA funds that go directly into the small communities, that it's almost like you can see it the next day, that the programs in the individual communities are so wanting to continue and looking at, well, how do we further make that dollar work in our community? How do we keep it there? And so so not only have we really expanded our area of expertise and started to add a number of other products to our economic development line, but so has our organizations. Yeah, and I think the first point there I've touched upon already. The rural organizations really, as a network, we are able to go to regional funders rather than just local funders, as well as national funders, and that's an enormous advantage when you're asking for match funds and just in the capacity of these big foundations. And let's see, I think that's it for me.
Well, thank you very much, Thomas. I appreciate that, and we may have some questions for you at the end. I know we are getting a little close to our time. If I can get my friend Jim to try to get us through this in about 7 or 8 minutes, we'll still provide some time for questions, and of course allow you to send questions into us, any further questions you have into us there. I want to turn it over quickly to Jim Gatz, who's the manager of the Assets for Independence program, who can give us some ideas and about the IDA program that they run there, which again is the largest funding source in the country. So let me turn it over to you, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Renee and John, and good to hear your voice, Thomas and Angela and everybody. Renee, I need to tell you, I had a little technical difficulty along the way too, and so I'm in a space where I don't have access to my computer, so I can't see which slides you're showing, but I'll do my best to ask you to turn the slides, okay? I
will go with that.
Okay, well, so, you know, I'm with the Office of Community Services at the Department of Health and Human Services, and I work on Assets for Independence, which provides grants to organizations all across the country that use match savings strategies, and IDAs, and financial education and other supports to families to help them become more financially secure. The Assets for Independence awards grants, but it also supports research and knowledge development and identifies best practices or good practices and tries to do what we can to support the asset building field across the country. And we do additional training and technical assistance and information sharing with our grantees and with other organizations that are interested in becoming grantees that are just interested in using asset building strategies to help low-income families through our AFI Resource Center. So I want to just talk a little bit about AFI, talk a little bit about how to apply, and then encourage you to take advantage of our Resource Center. If you go on the next slide, it says we are eager to support IDA projects, and that's right. This is a demonstration. Great. This is a demonstration program that Congress created 9 years or so ago to test IDAs and match savings, and we're really eager to enable this to be tested in lots of localities across the country, and then by lots of different types of organizations and by organizations that work with families and communities in different situations. So we're really eager to support new ones. We're eager to support these in rural areas and in frontier areas to see how it would work and see what it takes to use this strategy in those types of places. We award grants 3 times a year. There's 3 funding cycles. You can apply for a grant at any time, but we review them with due dates of January 15th, March 25th, and June 25th. So that means you can apply in January 25th, and if you don't quite have a strong enough application, you can try again in June 25th. Now, who administers AFI projects? Well, they're administered by lots of different types of organizations. Generally, they're multi-purpose, not-for-profits that support low-income families. Similar, like what we heard from Angela and Thomas, many of our grantees are organizations that are already providing important supports and services to families, and they add this match savings approach to their menu of services provided. It's very unusual to find an organization that only does match savings or that only does individual development accounts. But organizations like community action agencies and community development corporations, United Ways, local government, is through what we call network projects, which is like Thomas's project, where there's one organization that receives and administers the AFI grant, but it then works with a number of organizations throughout the state or throughout a larger geographic area to provide IDAs and other services to families all across that geographic area. You know, other places that do network projects include the North Carolina Department of Labor, the Minnesota Community Action Association, the Missouri Community Action Association, the Ohio CDC Association. There's lots of different ways to do network projects and lots of different types of organizations that do this work. Now, to be a grantee of ours, you just need to be a not-for-profit organization, or you can be a government agency that partners with the not-for-profit organization. And there is also a special provision in our law that allows us to award grants to credit unions that are designated as low-income designated credit unions. That means credit unions that are serving low-income communities. Or we can also award grants to organizations that are designated as community development financial institutions. In those two situations, they are not necessarily not-for-profit. Some of the CDFIs are actually for-profit and can be doing IDAs. And if you're an organization that's not among those eligible groups, you can become involved in the IDA field by joining one of our existing grantees or working with an organization that is eligible to put together a project, apply for a grant, and then work with them to do this work. All of our grants are for 5 years, and you can get an extension to make it 6 if you need that. And all of our grantees have to raise non-federal funding to match their AFI grant. So that, for example, if your organization were to apply for a $100,000 grant from us for a 5-year project, you'd need to have at least $100,000 in cash from a non-federal source, and you need to have that money when you need it to manage your project. You don't need it when you apply, but you need it, really some of it pretty early on so that you can start your project. Now, for our work, Assets for Independence has some rules about what families are eligible to participate, and these are very similar to what Renee talked about earlier. If a family is eligible for TANF in your state, then they would be eligible to participate in an AFI-funded IDA project. Or if they are eligible for federal earned income tax credit, or if they have a household income of less than 2 times the poverty rate, that's about $40,000 for a family of 4. And if they have a net worth less than $10,000, not counting a residence and 1 motor vehicle. And another important component that I need to make sure we mention here is that families that are using IDAs have to have earned income in order to save earned income in their IDA, so they need to have a job. People who are dependent on Social Security benefits or SSDI benefits alone aren't eligible to save in one of our IDAs. Now, as I mentioned, we have a resource center that we've developed over the past few years to do what we can to enable more organizations to receive AFI grants and to do this important work in their communities, and also to support our current grantees. And the Resource Center can provide you with guidance on developing a project. I got toolkits and templates for helping you plan a project and helping you and your partner organizations to develop your grant proposal. We also sponsor webinars, like orientation webinars for organizations that are interested in doing this work, which are free and available to anyone who has a phone. And we also do sponsor in-person orientation sessions, and we'll be doing more of those this spring. In fact, we're having an orientation session in Jackson, Mississippi in March 11th and 12th, and you're certainly welcome to attend that. We're planning another one up in the Northwest near Tacoma, I believe, sometime in April, but there'll be some more along the way. And beyond helping potential grantees learn more about IDAs, we also work to help our current grantees do their work. And the Resource Center has a newsletter which you can subscribe to. It's an electronic newsletter. It comes out every week on Thursdays. We also provide training and technical assistance to our grantees and a series of topical conference calls recently they've been focused on providing financial education in the context of an IDA program. We also have other training events. And we also have a data management system that we provide to our grantees, which we created mostly because many of the organizations that we supported were struggling with the data management and the tracking of the participant savings and the payments that were being made to the participants. And so we were attempting to reduce the administrative burden of the programs by providing grantees with a data system, a fairly basic data system, but it's one that they can use, and many do use. This API Squared is the name of the data system. I guess that's it. The Resource Center's phone number is there on your screen. You can give us a call or send us a note or check out our website for the Resource Center. It's www.idaresources.org. And I think that's it, and I talked as fast as I could, Renee.
Yeah, that's great, Jim. Thank you very much.
You did a good job. Thank you very much for that.
We will distribute this resource information to everyone following the webinar. We are at about our appointed hour, Renee, so we are not going to be able to open this up to additional questions. Renee, could you skip down to the, just through the slides very quickly from here? And we will, as part of the information that we post, we will give you this information about where to find more additional links that you can look at. Next slide, please. You'll find the webinar on our website, and we'll send you the link. And finally, one final point that I would really like to make for everyone, and that is, if you have questions about specific IDA program issues or challenges you're facing or you believe you might be facing in the future, please do let us know. We will look at offering in-depth peer advising webinars on specific issues. All it takes is you letting us know that you have a significant issue, and if we'll aggregate those and invite those with similar issues to participate together in future webinars specifically to provide peer advice and to learn more about those issues. So I want to thank everyone very much for participating with us today. I apologize that our technical problems led to us running out of question and answer time before the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us, and please do watch your email for notices of future webinars and let us know if there's more about this topic that you'd like to learn.